Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Carter's always a fool, 'cause he is a fool. Wow, the first thing I read in chat is somebody calling me a fool. That is crazy. And here I was gonna be all kind and sweet, but now I have to be grumpy just 'cause Carmilla. And not because I've only had 3 hours of sleep. Oh, I am. Yeah, I might be a little grumpy today because I've only had 3 hours of sleep, so I apologize in advance. Well, you see, when you fall asleep at 12 and you wake up at 3:30, that is how sleep works, yes. Now, if I'd slept earlier than that, then I would have had more sleep. You only had one, go back to sleep. There you go. 3 hours is good, 3 hours is not good. No, I went to sleep at I went to bed like 6 hours or 7 hours before I needed to go to sleep, right? Or to wake up. I just struggled to fall asleep, and that just happens sometimes. Take a nap at some point during the day. I'll take a nap tonight at bedtime. Good night, Wolfos. You should not be awake. You were awake before I went to sleep. Oh, here come the bats. Your brain will not be happy with you. My body is also not happy with me. And neither is God, apparently, based on how tired I am right now. But I'm eating some delicious breakfast, so that's okay. I'm also eating, that's why I keep muting. Did you ask me if I was eating lemons? I am most definitely not eating lemons. Alright. Oh. Thank you for the biddies. I appreciate it. Okay, I'll try not to be grumpy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Try to rest up for good health. I will. I will. Speaking of, before we continue, let me go put my time card in. Solian, I used the gift card you got me to buy lemons, not because the lemon went bad, but because I couldn't find it. So you're half right. Your dream was surprisingly spot on. I also used it to buy pizza and Eggo waffles and bananas and bread. So it's very nice. I'm eating the pizza. You need to have less nightmares. I'm happy to see you. Hello, hello. Alright, what are we gonna do? What if I just do my wife throughout my card collection today? That sound alright? We'll just go collect more trash. Or do we want to go play some... No, we're gonna do trash. It's like, I'm gonna do some Minecraft. No, my brain is not there for that. But I can pick up trash all day. I am muted, thank you. Hello, Dazai, welcome to Menagerie. Hello everybody. Oh, yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say hello to all the people who've checked in. And congratulate those who got first, second, and third. No, chicken, my brain was just too busy. It's all good. Alright, so first off, congratulations Sakona on getting second. Congratulations Ashers on getting first. Congratulations Spooky Cast for getting third, the only one in the correct position. Next. Good morning, Carmia. Good morning, Carmia. Good morning, Spooky Kaz. Good morning, Solian and Maddie. Good morning, Admale and Starwolf and Dasha. Good morning, Amy and Uno and Sinful. Good morning, Neely and Tillissima. Good morning, Kalis and Kakashi's wife, Sarah. Morning, Necro Ninja and Olivia. Thank you again for the bits, Olivia. Really appreciated. Good morning, Asher. Good morning, Gibbets and Shaken. Good morning, Little Nia and Wolfos. Good morning, Onyx and Lunar and Anizum. Good morning, Julia and Silly Goosey. Good morning, Deshaun. Good morning, Sleepy Sunny Puppy. Morning, Miri Ixel. Good morning, Ocean and Dragon and Day. Morning, Cinder and Sakona and Silverfang. Morning, Echo and Vanya. Hi, Vanya. Didn't expect you up. I guess here. No, it makes sense. I guess I should expect you up. Good morning, Butter Tub, in the tub with the butter. Morning, Roxanne. Have you seen the dog? Sorry. Have you seen the person cosplaying the butter dog? I think it's funny. Good morning, Pinky and Momo Mia. Good morning, Cats. Good morning, Bobby and Mumu and Seven. Good morning, Kitty Agath. Good morning, Anizum. Good morning, Missy Harvest. Morning, Leon and Maddie. And thank you for the bed, Spooky Gas. Welcome to the menagerie, Carl. Thank you for the follow. Good morning, Calypsy, Shadowy Destroyer and Chelsea. Good morning, Bristier and Allah and Render. Good morning, Little Mouse. Good morning, Meow Kitty Cat. And last but not least, good morning, Welshie, the Badger Queen. Yeah, Brain got cold, Gibbets. Yeah, I can't believe you chopped your hair, Gibbets. It's so crazy. Who does that? Don't judge you. Refused. Get judged. Alright, now let's make sure that the volume's okay. I was inside of the basket. Alright, is that a decent volume? Or is that too loud? Should we turn that down? What do you think? Fine, perfect. Good morning, SJJ. Welcome to the menagerie. Nice. I love this fish. Look at this fish. Enjoy your heap, sinful. Not sinful, sleepy. Wow. Les Steve. Who was Les Steve? Le Poison? Le Poisson, Steve? Le Poisson, Steve. So in French, all fish are named Steve? All fish in French are named Steve. Understood. Okay. Today I've learned something. Mm. We're not allowed to name our fish anything else in French. Steven? Oh, right. Sorry, it's got to be formal. Remember the 5th of November of gunfire, treason, and plot. I see no reason the 5th of November should ever be forgot. And there better not be anymore. No. Oh, I'll have to check it out later. Thank you, Zolin. I also made waffles. I had chocolate chip Eggo waffles. Morning, Ariana. How's your day? It's grumpy-inducing, 'cause I'm tired. I would commit violence, but I have no energy. So instead, here I sit. Oh no, that means I have to pay rent today, doesn't it? That's no fun. Try to make fresh waffles, make fresh waffles. Yes, we must keep the link. What if I learn how to sing that song in Polish? I think that's a good idea. Oh, enjoy crocheting, Leon. A lot of fun. Make me a scarf. Ink knows some Polish. Ink needs to teach me to sing that song then. Enjoy your studying. I appreciate you studying, honestly. Leposo, Steve. Me too, actually. Cheers. I think I've discovered one of my favorite things, but also one of my least favorite things. That is, if you keep your home cold enough, energy drinks that you don't put in the fridge are cold enough to be enjoyable to drink. Triangle. Triangle. No. I will happily be cold. As that means I can make more impulsive purchases. My name is pronounced Gene. Which is funny because I'm like, haven't people said my name all morning? And I realize you can't hear text. It is in the photo dump. It is also in my most recent TikTok. Alright, be good, Cinder. Sleep well. Apple bottom jean, boots with the jean. The whole club was looking at Jean. You've heard me say Jean before? You're right. It can also be pronounced Jean, though. On rare occasions, I will pronounce it like Jean. But on other times, I might pronounce it like Jean. Yeah. Other times, it's like Jean, though. It could even be Jean. Yep, I'll check out the Jean. I'll check out the fish song later. So, I know some of you are autistic, so I will explain. The joke is that there is no difference. And I know that sounds mean, but you know it's true. And you know somebody out there just went, oh, I see. Yes. No, see, you're totally fine. Don't feel silly. I'm saying in a deadpan voice, and if English is not your native tongue, or even if it is, my delivery can make that, you know, difficult to get. Have you ever had one of those situations? Like, so often people are like, I'm autistic. I'm like, that feels like a self-diagnosis, but I'm not really going to judge you for it because we all make our own self-diagnosis. And then other times you're like, the guy's like, I'm autistic, and you're like, yeah. I had that happen the other day. Where I was watching I was watching a TikTok, and he was describing something, and I'm just like, you know, the thing you're describing feels like it could be normal, but like I can tell you're heavily autistic, and the more I'm listening to you, the more I realize that that's valid. Ooh, I love hunting. What? Why does this cup say I love hunting? You're not a doctor? I'm not a doctor. You are right. I could be. Maybe I am a doctor. Chat, my name is Dr. Jean. I'm ready to diagnose you. You ready? You all have a dumb, sleepy baby face. Congratulations on your diagnosis. So I am grumpy today. No, you do. It's fatal. No. You will live between 5 and like 90 years, but it will eventually kill you. Oh yeah? Thank you for the biddies. I appreciate it. Well, you gave me biddies for misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? I'll take the money though. Thank you. That's valid, biscuit. Dumb, sleepy, resting voice syndrome. True. Alright, I got you, sweetie. Here we go. Nice little southern voice just for you. I realize it might be a little bit subtle today, but that's because I'm tired. Kamiya, when you contacted the ADD people, were they like, this was a test, we wanted to see how long you could wait for your diagnosis, you failed? Or maybe they're like, if you never contacted us again, we realize that you've had executive dysfunction and you probably have ADD. It's true. Well, you know what they say, autistic people have strong belief systems. Yeah, that's fair. On Monday, I never go to work. On Tuesday, I stay at home. On Wednesday, I've never been inclined to work is the last thing on my mind. On Thursday, it's a holiday. Yeah, on Thursday, it's a holiday. Fridays I detest, oh, it's much too late on a Sunday. Sunday's a day of rest. Oh, whiny voice. Why did I leave the whiny voice on this early in the morning? I don't think I can even really manage that one right now. Maybe I'll remember to disable it next time. But I guess I'll do it for now. Yeah, I'm just drinking an energy drink. That's all I got on me right now. I didn't have enough time to make a proper cup of tea. So instead, I'm just gonna be here. Oh, I hate that mask. It's too bright. There it is. Packing up all this lovely, lovely trash. And soon we'll be there. You tired so you know the word right. What word is you trying to do? It's alright though. Triangle. Ish. Flippy. That's where we are now. Thank you for the Lexies. Carmia, you see that's the problem. I don't believe in double standards. Not that, like, I don't believe in doing them, I just don't believe they exist. I don't care if Monday's blue, Tuesday green, Wednesday too, Thursday. Da, 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 it's Friday, I'm in love. Mm-hmm. I might be getting house flipper soon. Double standard. It's a thing. I realize I don't have to click every time. Watch this, you ready? I only have to hold the button. I've been tapping so quickly this entire time, and I didn't need to. Right. Isn't that incredible? Look how good I'm doing now. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing my gorgeousness. You started an inside joke on me. Aren't you proud of yourself? You should make a potato VTuber model. That'd be so cool. Right. Don't forget to remove your tattoos during the winter. Put them on the shelf, just in case they get too cold. See, the thing is, if you keep your tattoo covered, you never know how it's doing, and thus it has to be doing good, like me. As long as I never look at my life, I have to assume it's doing well. It isn't until I look at my life and realize things are on fire that things are actually bad. So, ignore your problems today. You should take care of your healed tats too. Make sure you're regularly applying lotion to maintain color, consistency, and quality. If you're not putting lotion on your tattoos regularly, they will slowly fade over time. And use sunscreen. Exactly. Like all my debt. Bird. I have a tattoo. It's very large, but I will be getting more. And once I hit partner, I will probably get I will one day actually get a Void Link tattoo. Maybe not right when I get partner. But I will most definitely be getting a Void Link tattoo at some point. I have 2 piles of trash more, and there's more. See, we have all of these piles of trash too. This one and this one and this one. Then we have that one. Then we have that one. And that's probably the last pile, isn't it? Nope, there's one here too. And this one's its own pile. Yeah, and this is the last one. So this will go on for a while. I imagine every day we'll probably clear a pile of trash, depending on how tall they are. Oh, I would be amazed if someone got a Gene-themed tattoo. But always be careful getting tattoos involving people or communities. So get something you'd like, even if you ended up hating me later on. Not saying there's any reason you should hate me, but you never know. Good morning, Anaruvi. Welcome to the menagerie. There's a spider in here and you're terrified. Remember, spiders are nearsighted. It most likely cannot see you. That the fear is triggered by the motion and is not based on anything else. But remember that the spider honestly doesn't even realize you're there and has no ill intention towards you. The lotto? What lotto? No. I actually looked into research into spiders. The reason why you'll often see spiders on white surfaces is because they cannot see very well. So they put it on something that's a contrast so that if they are to be doinking, they can find each other. But we're not going to talk about anything else. We're fine. But that's enough about spiders. Oh, what's with the new follower lotto? I'm a gambler. I like gambling. So I have gamble theming. Carme, when does your brain not go blank? Let's be honest. You have a good brain. You do have a nice brain. It's very pretty. Yes, you can. Too many thoughts. Too many hoes in this house. Too many hoes in this house. AKA too many thoughts. Gifting subs 100 bits and following. And raids. Enjoy your waffle. You know, I think I figured out why they gave you the valuable items. We're gonna test something real quick. Yep. I think the reason why there's valuable items is because if you run out of energy, you can't pick up more trash. But you can still pick up valuable items. And you can sell valuable items to get enough to buy an energy drink. And then you can keep playing. Take a bath or something. I have filters over my screen? What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean by I have filters on my screen. Oh, okay. No. So I use a program called Shoost. It's not like PNGs. It's very specifically a program used to, it's run like a photo booth. And so it has special like lighting conditions that'll take like, for instance, the background and layer it over top of it, or it'll do, there are like little lighting effects and stuff. How all of it works, I don't know. But it is a separate program I use. I mostly use it because it has a camera that tracks. So when I move around on the scene, the camera will follow me. And the game Reflect is something different. I use another program, and that does do a mirroring of the screen over myself, like right now with the lighting. That is it is a live blurred rendering of the game that's overlaid. That's wrong. I have not played Wonderstop. I do not know what that is. I am tired, Coral. Very tired. You know what? I don't understand this actually. We're selling trash. Who are we selling trash to? I understand that this is an important part of the gameplay loop because it won't really work without that, but where's the trash going? Really? That's fun, Carmia. eBay? Would you like to buy a bag of unlabeled trash? Yeah. Raccoon Overlords, I like that one. Like, it's not even sorted trash, that I can understand. Like, imagine if we had to go through and we sort the trash for recycling, so we pull out all the plastics and stuff. Then we get refunded like that. Yeah. Oh. Well, I'll have to remember that game. those Amazon pallet things, and then it just ends up back at the dump and we sell it again. Yeah, see, I could understand recycling, but not when we put food stuff, paper, and waste and all that stuff in one bag. I think it'd be better if we had to actually sort the trash. But that's just me. I know not everybody's like that. Oh, I play Minecraft regularly on hardcore for ASMR. It's just not a Minecraft day. My brain does not function right now. But it can most definitely do trash. No brain, just trash. Carmia, you're grumpy with me for existing, let's be honest. Not always. Valid. I can just do this. And then we shut off Carmia's brain. Math is not fun, you lie. Oh. You're ugly when you lie, Dib. I'm not lying. Then why are you ugly? It's a meme, that's why. All of the items are meme items. Enjoy your eeps, Pink. Enjoy your eeps. Burn. Well, everybody's heard about the burn. Bird, bird, bird. Bird is a word. I said a bird. A bird. A bird is a word. Well, a bird, 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 and a bird and a word. Don't you know about the bird? I said everybody heard that the bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird and a word. Well, a bird. Surfing. Hello, small bean. I say hello. Enjoy your eeps. Say wow, small bean. Bye, Ariana. Well, the burn is a word. Well, a burn, and a burn is a word. Burn is a word. Well, a burn is a word. Oh, it's your birthday? Today? Or tomorrow? Anyways, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, small bean. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. I hope it was a good one. Or is it gonna be a good one? Either way. Now to sing you the song of my people. Oh, well, let everybody's heard about the bird, bird, and the bird is a word, oh, well, the bird, bird and a word, oh, well, the bird, and a bird is a word. Don't you know about the bird? I said everybody's heard that the bird is a word, oh, well, a bird is a word, oh, well, a bird. I have a good heaps. I love that bird. African greys are so incredibly intelligent. Such smart birds. It's a macaw, right? Oh no, I vibrated. 1 second. Why is the tape trans? What was the tape's gender before? Haven't you heard about the bird? How long will stream be? 1 more hour. You are trans? Are you tape? Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Good morning, Lucy. Game broke. Game broke. Game broke. That's fine. I'm also happy for you. Have fun with work. Honestly, I've been really liking Lost Energy recently. I like the monster that is the Peachy Dream or whatever it is, and the Strawberry Dream ones, the ones that are like a little creamy. Those ones are very good. Peachy Keen, that's what it is. Ooh. Could decorate the basement? You may. Until I'm more awake, and then I will fight you on it. I know, but I've decided I can change my mind whenever I feel like it. Oh, look at this little pile of bones. No, they're all worth the same. No. Did not understand it, a man can be. They're gonna clean up your looks with all the lies in the books to make it. Cause they sleep with a gun and keep an eye on you so they can hurt all the things you do. Cause the drugs never They're gonna rip off your heads, your aspirations to shreds. Another cock in the moon. Well, they encourage your complete cooperation. Give you roses when they think you need to smile. The doctors and the nurses, they adore me so. Really good at love. I'm proud of you, Luna. You're my walls. You're not the first. It's probably getting pretty cramped in there. You have to show up to all of your classes, but you can just show up. You don't have to do more than that. Yeah. The voidlings have gotten too chubby off the installation, and now we're insulated by voidlings. They're in the walls. Most of them are stuck. Can you make voidlings out of installation? And if you had enough of an emotional tie to it. Depends on whether your classes care about attendance. Make sure you pass your classes. It's a bonking stick. This is the bonking bat that people keep bonking people with when they're horny. The horny bat. It keeps breaking on people's heads. Yep, that happens. Shanks, that is outside of my expertise. That'd be up to the individuals. All I want for Christmas is my two front teeth. My two front teeth. I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. Only hippopotamus will do. My toneless humming. I'm glad you enjoy it. There is no way out of the basement. You see, if you can get out of the basement, there's more traps outside. I mean, there's no traps. Why would I ever have traps? Good luck. I believe in you. And eventually you end up with the flock. You don't want to end up with the flock. Femboys. I'm kidding. I don't know about the roleplay. My brain is dead. You'll have to ask me in the evening when I'm alive. My car gets bigger every once in a while. I have been paying to upgrade the cart. Triangle. Yeah, the flock at least has positives. Boop. Burn the Witch. Oh, I love that song. Dun 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 dun. Oh, the doggo, he finds valuables, but honestly, like, I don't know what he finds. It really hasn't been that beneficial. He just exists now. Because, I mean, the valuables aren't really valuable enough to really matter, and I'm gonna clean up all the trash anyways. Yeah, that's what the flock is. The flock also helps me find business deals. I provide them with a monthly sacrifice, and they return with, potential opportunities. Do the thing. I believe in you. You got this. No. No, why would you sacrifice somebody? That clearly reduces the amount of sacrifices I have. I mean, what? Littering. Remember, toasters are based on heat. So, if you let toast cool down after putting it in, have an issue. Better to set it right the first time. Le boo boo. Oh, you're fine. The issue was people used to just like have full-on conversations between each other, and that got really frustrating to deal with because it kind of makes the chat an unwelcoming place when there's not that many people talking at the time. So people would be worried about, you know, interrupting conversation. So I was like, yeah, just, you know, there's a Discord y'all can talk to. Why am I tied to a stick? Don't worry about it. Or we had people who would straight up flirt in chat originally. And I was just like, if you want to flirt, you can do that on your own time in another space, but this is not the space for that. Yeah, and you can also DM on, like, Twitch. Did you know that the way toasters work is that there is a coiled metal that expands as it gets heated? And the more you toast it, the more that coil will expand until eventually it will hit the button that will pop up your toast. So the thicker the bread, the less likely there's heat, the longer it'll stay in the toaster. That's why on a cold day your toaster might take longer to toast. There are some toasters that are timers, but it's very rare. It's more expensive usually too. And so when people are like, does toasters use toastiness as a setting? Yes, it does. The numbers are a toastiness setting. I found this out because I used to date an engineer. An engineer walked me through how toasters work. Exactly. Light, medium, dark makes more sense. There is a post going around being like, toastiness level doesn't make any sense, it's gotta be minutes. It's like, it's not minutes, honey. It is toastiness level. Yeah. Yes, actually. Date smart people, take their knowledge. Depends on the toaster for me personally. I'm a 2 to 3 person. But every once in a while, if you do one twice, gives you this really dry, crunchy bread that is lovely. Not for like sandwiches, just to munch on. Feels like it almost caramelizes the wheat. The gluten. Yep. Good option, cut me out. Sorry, Junior, you're gonna have to burn. We're only toasting you, it's fine. Like a marshmallow. Yeah, because tea should have sugar in it. Tea should be sugar and lemon. Let me have my German tea. Carmi, have you ever had lemon in tea? In a black tea, have you ever had lemon? Alright, then you're gonna have that. Take a black tea, 2 teaspoons or whatever you have of sugar, add a little bit of lemon until it gets just a nice little lemony taste to it, and drink it. It's delicious. Thank you for the follow, Link. Welcome to the menagerie. You never drank tea? You should try tea. You can make tea out of so many things. Okay, Jen. I'm such a good dog, Onyx. Didn't notice until now. I apologize, I didn't notice the redeem. You may have coffee. Alright, Maddie. You shouldn't have told me that. You ready, chat? Here we go. Just kidding. Imagine. Aggressively moans. I wouldn't do that to you. I'm gonna wait until until I'm a big VTuber to pull pranks like that so I can use them for clip farming. Just yell about this person likes blah blah blah. Bada breath. Tea soaked in fruits. Ooh. Or fruits soaked. Okay, that sounds good. It's a circle. I think it's a meme. Chat, let's make sangrias. It's early in the morning. Let's just all drink sangrias, my little voidlings. Oh, Gibbets, you were in that group message I sent out yesterday, right? Did you see the group message? Alright, cool. You gotta make your coffee. Enjoy your coffee. Make me a cup, please. Easter, it's going pretty well. How are you doing? Thank you for the lurks. I make sure my music's looping this morning. Yep, it is. Nothing out of me. They could care less as long as someone only. Yay, coffee. I could go for some drip coffee right now. Alright, next pile of trash. They say now teenagers get living out of me. They can care less as long as someone will bleed out. So darken your clothes, violent burn. Maybe they'll leave you alone, but not me. You found me by luck? Oh, that is lucky. I'm in the trash pile now. Good morning. Good morning, Lucida. Welcome to the menagerie. I escaped somehow. Enjoy your adulting. Is the machine still broke? Oh. Good morning, Moo Moo. Yeah. Yes, it is. Oh. Yeah. It is. My wife threw out my cards, so I bought the dump to find them all. I have 57 energy drinks right now. And in the game I also have 57. Actually, we haven't cleaned these cards yet. Let's clean our new cards. Here's Orin Play. I don't know who that is, but they look interesting. We have Spark Nip. Oh, we have Raptor. That man looks goofy. Spring Bip. Chill Orb. And Shroud. I recognize Shroud. Thank you, Gummy. Follow Ren. Welcome, Ren. The Pokemons are safe. We'll get them all. Oh. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know what your name is, I cannot pronounce it. Welcome, Azar. Or Azar. How you doing? Oh, this game is... Which, we said it earlier, I don't think you believed me though. It is... my wife tossed out all of my cards, so I bought the dump to find them all. That is the name of the game. White robot with cowboy hat? Meme. Most of these are all memes, little meme items. Nope, that is what that is the name of the game. Of course, Glitch. Good luck. Have good luck today. And this is the stop sign pile. There we go. Thank you, Solian. Thank you for the coffee. Okay, so your wife threw out all of your playing cards. So you bought a dump to try to find all of the playing cards. Maybe it works. It might be. Him surrounded by trash. Enjoy your sleep slowly and sleep well. Oh. I'm sure your cats still love you. They're trying to mark their territory. If you don't have a lint roller, remember rolling tape around your finger can work in some situations. Oh, enjoy your sweeping. I thought it was a typo. Why would you ever apologize about needing to sleep at 4 a.m.? You're fine. Enjoy your eeps. That's funny. Every time I place the bag, because it takes up the same spot as me, it launches me to the top of the trash pile. Oh. Well, I hope you do better, Mochi. You should wear a jacket to your school. Did I fall asleep? Yes, totally. Did you know if I cover up my camera, eventually I'll fall asleep? Wait, watch. It's taking too long, I give up. But if my camera loses tracking of me for a certain amount of time, my model will do a little sleepy thingy. Yes, it is. Yum, yum, yum. I found Rule 34. Good morning. Good morning to King. Don't eat candles. Candles are not good for your health. Don't eat candles though, Carmia. No, eating candles is not good for you. Yeah, well, don't. Spiced butternut squash soup is delicious. I don't believe you. I do not believe they make edible candles. How? And oh wait, no, they do. They make like lard candles and stuff that you then are supposed to like scoop up with bread. Don't eat hydrogen peroxide. Oops. Alright, enjoy your class, Big Biscuit. I believe in you. Go get it. Hydrogen peroxide is deadly. Do not drink it. I'll make you tomato soup. Do I have any? I don't have any tomatoes. I can't make you tomato soup. I'm sorry. Hmm? Small amounts of hydrogen peroxide diluted to a 10% solution can be used for whitening teeth. Good night. Good night, Seven. That sounds good. All I have right now is bananas and spaghetti squash. And onions. I think I have mashed potato mix, actually. I could probably make potato soup. I've tried making French onion soup and I failed both times. I'm gonna try again. Really? Oh, cara mia. I will make you some spaghetti squash. Do not worry about my empty cupboard. I am fine. Hello, hello. Morning. I could also go for some soup. Instead, I'm eating slightly burnt pizza. I could make miso soup. I do have miso in my fridge. I have everything I need for miso soup. Grilled cheese. I have no cheese. No cheese. No cheese. No cheese. It's a sad day, I know. Grill me a cheese, then, or else I'll start crying. I am envious of your cheese. That sounds delicious. Oh, what time is it? Oh, we're coming up close to the end of stream, lovelies. I have work today. Yep, I might spend a little time to move laundry around and such. So in just a couple minutes, I'll see if we can find somebody to raid out to. That's an RGB iron. Imagine having an RGB iron. Exclamation point Discord for the Discord. Because it's cool. That's why you need it. Dude, Gene EP? No, you're EP. I can't believe Karamiya said dude. I'm kinda grumpy. Tis adorable. Tis. I like saying tis. I can't even judge you for that one. Yeah, but you say I use hun in a way that I don't think I use hun, so I don't believe you. Have a good one. No brain. Bye, Keezy. Bird. Don't you know about the bird? I said everybody heard of the bird and the word over the bird. Bird and the word over the bird. The first one was Zelda's Lullaby. This one is Sarah's thought song. Dum dum. Song Storms is Gerdo's Valley. Oh shoot, how does that one go? Practice Ocarina, why not? Alright, lovelies, we have about 5 minutes left, so I am going to see if we can find somebody to raid out to. Yes. We almost finished 2 piles of trash, look at that. Let's see who we have this morning. Nobody. I don't have time to find anybody new. Shrimps. Wait, the shrimps aren't online. Oh, the shrimps are online. Alright, lovelies. We're gonna go raid the shrimps. There's a few snails on the screen. Y'all say hi to shrimps for me, okay? I'm gonna go right now for a while. Oh, there's a lot of people here this morning. Hello, all you lovely people. That's so silly. Alright, we're gonna do that. Raid. Alright, lovelies, you be good, okay? Mwah. 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 Have a good day at school, work, or eeps. Bye. No, they're just shrimps. They're okay. They can handle loud noises. Boy.